first and foremost, welcome everybody. Again, this is an RMK production, and this is Storytime and Wine. And our queen is missing at the moment, but she had an engagement that she's running a little bit behind. She'll be joining us shortly. But I was excited as we talked about like tonight's session, to really have a good conversation about what is known and considered to be cancel culture. And before we start diving into like a specific topic, like Nicole Hannah Jones' situation in at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, I'd like to hear like what do you guys think about that topic? Like, so when you hear that, what comes to mind? And just pop yourself off and share if anything comes to mind. You hear cancel culture, like, and so what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Okay, I'll go first. Well, for me, the cancel culture is something that pretty much you are no longer supporting or putting your effort to support somebody who has had an opposing view. It's something that right now is very big. It's gotten bigger from the community of Black culture and has now extended into mass media. So it has definitely taken on a different head of its own, I would say. From what it was supposed to start off as, which was just like, them not being supporting somebody, say an artist or a public figure who was very, very big. Now it has changed to pretty much be whoever decides it is at that moment. So it's something that pretty much is just at its own self, is something in its own self at this point. Depends on who you're talking to. Cancel culture, it depends on them.
Thank you, Tori, for sharing. Anybody else got thoughts about that?
Now, when we first came up with this conversation, I've spent the last couple of days asking people's feedback. And my biggest question is that where did this cancel culture come from? Because it has to start somewhere. Um, was it because of the internet? What does that make it easier in order for us to basically say, I've had enough? Is it something that has always been there? Or is it something that is brand new, and why?
Good question.
I don't think it's brand new. They just put a different name or a different title on being ostracized and taking someone else's opinions and thoughts and saying, I don't agree with them and just canceling them out. However, people cross the line way too often. I rock with this topic because it's my freedom of speech. However, some people do not know how to deliver a message so that it's received with a positive tone, and people put their personal issues and their thoughts into some of the message that they deliver, especially when they're on a broader platform. And we have to hold people accountable when they are speaking to millions, because only one sentence can spark a war. It could spark, look at Capitol Hill, just a few sentences, and everyone ran with it. So when you have a platform and you have millions of followers, then cancel culture means think before you speak.
But doesn't cancel culture um, not only lend itself to, the people that we place as idols, role models, and whatever, but it also trickles down into where we are on the ground level, that we are no longer tolerant of a conversation. We pick and choose words out of a conversation in order to serve our own personal agenda.
That's a good question.
I think it can definitely go into that. For the reason being that now, when you look at social media is the way of conversation. It's the way of communicating. It's the way of finding out what's going on in recent times. So, like Danielle said, cancel culture could have been out for years prior. However, with social media being the way it is now and being like the main form of communication amongst people from all over the world, it's now something that is more so broadcast to the forefront. So if you have had just the same way there's been a lot of things that's been going on in the world that we would have never known until probably months later or years later at a time. But now with social media and just a click of a button or just a click of a phone, you can find out what's going on live time in the current moment. So right now I would say that it it definitely has been something that has been around for a little bit. But for the state that we're in when it comes to social media and being in the times we are, it's just more prevalent now. Just like with anything, I would say.
All right. I want to ask this. And first, I didn't properly introduce myself. For those of you, many of us, we know each other. My name is Kevin McLemore. I am co-founder of RMK Production. Raymond Porch, educator, we call him the Cloud. He's also a co-founder. He's also the co-host of One Queen, Two King, co-host to this platform, Storytime and Wine. And I want to put this out there, and because I want you to think about this. Two of the same situations, two different results. There was a young country artist just before the Music Country Awards came about. His name is Morgan Walden. Evidently, there was a video that went wild. He had expressed a certain kind of way, and it was recorded, it was released. Within 24 hours, the people that were responsible for his livelihood decided to separate. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Diana joined us and I was telling her hello and welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No worries.
All right. Please forgive me for our listeners that are listening in. My mic kind of went out and I wasn't quite for sure what was going on. But anyway, the conversation between what had happened, the results of that conversation, basically his sponsors, his record deals and whatever all had expired by the time that video went viral. I know I personally reached out to him because I wanted to see where that conversation came from, because I know that we are either taught and then there's something's caught. But on the other hand, Raymond and I and some other friends, I think Jeff, we have another community that basically the same conversation he has is part of the culture in the music, and it's played. That same night, I witnessed on one of the social media platforms a video being recorded and being streamed and posted where there were two women questionably dressed. And in the audience, there was a young child, I'm safely assuming 8, 9, 10 years of age, with his parents watching this as dollar bills. Why is it right for one and wrong for the other? And they're the same things. Or do we not have empathy, or do we not ask the question, why? Was it a slip of a tongue, an emotional reaction, or is it just how you live your life?
So I think for me, like what I think about when I think about that scenario, and I think about how I think about cancel culture, I agree with a lot of what's been shared so far. And I think that, I guess a big piece for me is it's this idea, this term, from what I've experienced and seen and read and explored. What's the big element for me is that it is about social media oftentimes, and it's also about messaging, right? And so I think, to Tori's point, when people, and Danielle, when people are against a particular opinion or perspective, today, what folks have the power to do, just like we have the power to get positive messaging out or to address concerns through social media, I think what I'm seeing and experiencing and hearing is the counter narrative, right? So I hear cancel culture, I hear terms like political bias, right? And so it's the weaponization of messaging is what this becomes, in my opinion, right? In my experience. I was having a conversation. I'm in a new role, in a school district, and we were talking about, the Hannah Nicole, circumstance at University of North Carolina. and the decision that she made to not go to the university, as you know, there was a concern about her tenure and these things, and her resume, if any of you can pull it up, is beyond reproach. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. She's an exceptional researcher, educator extraordinaire, without beyond reproach. 1619 Project, that was the trigger, right? So that is the space where the attack started on her, right? And what I really appreciated about how she handled all of that, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, or we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics, was that she didn't buy into it, right? She stayed positive. She stayed talking about what her gains were at the University of North Carolina, and why she wanted to go back there. And she was even ready to agree to a 5-year contract without tenure, right? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, you know, I haven't researched this. Maybe Marjorie has. I know she looked into this probably in a little bit more depth than I have, possibly, but I would wonder how many Pulitzer Prize winners are tenured, track professors at the University of North Carolina. And so the why is why did all of this happen? And so Kevin's scenarios are why. Why do you think these scenarios happen? And my take on it would be it's weaponization, because what's happened here in the last, I'd say 24, 36 months is that there's a culture around social media and messaging, and folks utilize that culture in real time to address systemic issues, to address long-standing issues. And all you got to do is record it. All you got to do is tweet it. All you got to do is put it on Facebook. And now, depending on what the topic is, you can turn a brush fire into a forest fire. And Fox 25 News, perfect example of misdirection, oftentimes inflammatory statements and framing and platforming without evidence to support claims being made. And when you have the danger of the single story on blast, oh yeah, weaponization can happen. So that's kind of what I think when I hear cancel culture, and I think about this particular case that we'll talk a little bit more about. But just quickly, Marjorie Phoenix has joined us, and she is our is the host of Storytime and Wine, and the other third of RMK Production, co-founder and queen extraordinaire. So I wanted to sidestep here and just welcome her into the space. And
welcome Marjorie Phoenix. All right.
So glad to see you guys in the house. Guys, thanks for, taking care of everything while I was gone.
All right.
You're doing a good job. Continue on.
Now, Raymond, let me ask you a question, okay? Because in every story, in every movie, where there's a villain, there is someone trying to have a position, and there's a hero. In these cases, where are the heroes? Where are the people standing up for the wrongs that should be right? We all seem to gather around and make ourselves public, and have our voice when we are exercising what's the new word, emotional reasoning, where people create their own truth and then they stand on a platform they can't defend. Where's the heroes in this? Why are we in small rooms and we have these conversations and no one's stepping up?
Listen, that is a fantastic question. And it's one, for me, that I have to ask myself every day. And I think what I think, in my opinion, and I would love to hear from others, is that if we define a hero in this context as someone who stands up and doesn't stand back, I think it's harder to do in this context, because what you're trying to stand up for is or against in a situation may be a premise that isn't fact-based, and you can't win. And sometimes, because messaging in our society is intentionally weaponized. You all remember when Black Lives Matter had hit its crescendo, and you had folks who weren't a part of Black Lives Matter wearing shirts and wristbands and intentionally rocking with Black Lives Matter to sabotage, right? And so what would happen is the narrative would change, right? So you would effectively move the goalpost. And so that's the level of how you can see cancel culture operationalized as a weapon, right? So you destroy from within. It's the same thing with messaging on mass media, right? I don't need to show up with facts when my audience just wants me to show up and light a gas, just gaslight a topic that they feel a way about because they don't know enough about it, or they feel like they're going to lose something in that conversation that they're limited understanding. So fear will eat you alive. So how are you a hero in those situations and stories? It's a lot harder to do, right? Because if you don't step into a space, you know, or a topic or conversation, that is one that you're informed about, one that's based in fact, you could be making the situation worse while you're trying to stand up. You could be fueling the intent. If the intent is just a gaslight situation, you know, that can be dangerous. So
You, you
that's
know,
my
when,
take on it.
when you look at it and describe it this way, if you go back to biblical sense, if you look at the fact, the way that publicly Christ was crucified in a public forum, they canceled him and no one defended him. And we're repeating that on a much larger scale. And the victims are heroes. The victims are the people that are standing on a platform that's called education. And people don't realize that education is a platform that is not designed. Raymond, you know this. You're in this forum. You can't have education where it has to be comfortable. The only way that you learn is that you have these uncomfortable conversations like we're having, and you make people think and go from there.
Can I just say too to that I think that, you have to be the hero sometimes ourselves, right? You know how I feel about that, us being the change. And Raymond's right, it's not always that easy. But I think in this instance with this story with Nicole Hannah Jones, she was the hero. No one was gonna come and save her from that situation, but what she did was she saved herself and took somebody with her, um, and said, you know what, I'm taking my money, my knowledge, my skills, all of that, and I'm going to a Black university, and I'm going to go take this, and we're going to go raise up some more intellectuals, some more, people who are going to do the same kind of work that I'm doing. And that's being the hero of your own story. And that's really what it's going to be right now. Like, we can't be looking for someone to come and save you out of situations. We got to be the one saving ourselves and everyone around us. So, I mean, and the other part of this whole cancel culture thing is that now, and Raymond was talking about it, they've weaponized it, right? They've taken it, they've generalized it. They've made it about everything. Even white men are being canceled now. You know, it's like they end up controlling the narrative on it. And that's what I'm saying. What she did, she flipped it. She's like, you can't cancel me. Okay. All right. I'm canceling all of this bullshit. Y'all putting me through this hypocrisy, and I'm going over here. And that's agency. That's what we need to start using, is our agency to do that kind of stuff. You think Bill Cosby cares that the majority of the Black community might have canceled him? He
No.
he doesn't care. He has the money, he's got the network, he's all of that, and he's got the legacy, because no matter what, because that was the other part of this whole cancel culture phenomenon, was that, whether you believe he did what he did, didn't do it, or whatever, right? A lot of people canceled him, and but yet we love the work that he's brought. We love the way he portrayed the Black family in the Cosby Show. We love how he showed, HBCUs. We love what he brought, to media. And that's something we can't even get away from. So we really can't even cancel him.
Listen, I asked a question. How many of us, and I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm gonna let you chime in
No,
30
that's
seconds.
okay.
Listen, how many of us wondered out loud, yo, when they went after Felicia Rashad, right? On some, she's known this dude more than half her life, and he's paved the way for her to sit in the seat she sits in at the HBCU as a chair, right? And probably changed the life of her whole family because of that show that revolutionized America, not just Black America, all America. And so the saying for us, the bigger the platform for us, oh man, the greater the fall, right? And so how many of the HBCUs, that one in particular, yo, did you send the check back? Yo, did y'all send the check back? Bruh, I want to know what the check is, because he wrote checks. So you want to cancel me? Cool. Can I get my money back? You know what I'm saying? Like y'all didn't send a check. Y'all took back y'all's honorary doctorate degrees. Y'all did all that. Tufts, and when my wife worked at Tufts, they done took his picture off the wall. All great. Send the check, please. I got you. Send me the check. You know what I'm saying? Jeff, go ahead.
No, and I was gonna, you and Margie, and I was thinking some of the exact same things. And my whole thing is with that, I'm not, a judge, I'm not a trained lawyer or anything, but I've listened to the things. And as this story was coming out about him, he as an American citizen, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty, right? And so, but in the court of public opinion, because of how things transpired, he was guilty. But the law, according to the law and how he was tried, he was found not guilty because he wasn't, he wasn't tried properly, just that whole process. But as you talk about the cancel culture, leading up to that and throughout the whole thing, it was he's guilty of all of these things, of all of these accusations, even though you had some women retracting statements and saying things were falsified. But because who controls the narrative, and that information was out long before going to trial, he was already guilty. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not here to say did he do it or he didn't do it, but he was still entitled to due process, which did not happen in this case. And that's what transpires a lot of times. It's like people are guilty, and then you go through the whole process. You have to go through the process because again, it's the burden is on the prosecution to prove that you did what you did. So until that happens, you have to be given the benefit of the doubt that maybe some of these things didn't happen, or some of these things aren't true, they're fabricated, or like you said, these people are controlling the narrative to put that out there. But again, due process.
Yes, we've got a new guest in here. Diana, welcome to Storytime and Wine. Welcome. We have Efon that's been with us from the beginning of Storytime and Wine. Would you guys like to chime in, either one of you?
No.
Diana?
Yeah, I'm listening to this conversation, and what I think about more so are the white powerful men that are getting canceled. And when I think about cancel culture, because like what we were talking, even with Bill Cosby right now, what you're talking about, he's a very powerful person who's had a lot of influence. And I think about these men, especially at university systems and things like that, who have gate kept people out of positions, and they got positions of power that they should have never had in the first place. And I agree that the cancel culture, I think that cancel culture can be used way more often on people who do not have power and influence. And we're only really hearing about it when there's when someone that is powerful and influential gets canceled. But I agree, there's a lot of weaponization happening now with it. But I'm a graduate student with Tulane University, and I don't know if you guys have been hearing about what's been going on with their medical program. And there's a federal lawsuit because the head of the internship, or I can't remember what position she has. She's a Black woman who is the head of like placing the placement of the medical students. She filed a discrimination claim against the university because basically she got told by the dean of students that she couldn't get a higher up position within the university because it would make them less influential. And then a lot of students of color are coming out and talking about how they're getting worse placements. They're getting, they don't get as preferable placements in the medical program. And there's a lot in the social media realm about taking away Tulane's medical accreditation for their university because there's people at the top that are still gatekeeping people out of these positions because it doesn't look respectable enough. And so I wonder sometimes when there's people that are in powerful positions, how many people didn't get to that place in the first place? How many people fell off out of the pipeline along the way because they never got the opportunity to show or like to live up to the potential that they have because someone at the top thought that like they were entitled to that, you know, position.
So yeah, it's Christina Watkins, and she's the first Black. It says first Black residency director. Yeah, that story. You know, I saw it, and I didn't get a chance to look at it, but I recognized her face because it was showing up in news feeds around the same time as the I forget the broadcaster's name from ESPN and the whole Rachel Nichols story when that broke. So Rachel Nichols is a broadcaster for ESPN, and she made some inflammatory comments about a fellow broadcaster who happened to be a woman of color, who's a little bit younger, coming up, really skilled and talented. So you would think, right, in this instance, that like this is my assumption as a man, right, that because we've heard a lot of the narrative and we know that there's a lot of facts to back these claims. When we start talking about what men make in athletics and what men make in broadcast versus what women make, it's just come to light, and you know that Stephen A. Smith, who's a big time broadcaster for ESPN, makes upwards of $10 million, right? And so when this particular female Black sportscaster was gaining more traction and getting opportunity, Rachel Nichols, who's an incumbent at ESPN, was caught on a hot mic making, you know, comments about, you know, ESPN trying to shore up its poor diversity programming, and she inferred that was this Black broadcaster's traction, that this was ESPN, not because she was talented, not because she deserved it, but because ESPN was trying to shore up its bad diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of stance as a broadcast company. So when you think about, you know, cancel culture, so backlash came quickly for Rachel Nichols, right? And so to your point, Diana, I think what's hard about this is it does, and I think Danielle spoke to this earlier, and Tori spoke to this earlier, it does have a life of its own, and it can backlash on anyone. But if you ask yourself, if we took, everybody here took the next 15 days, right, Monday through Sunday, and just looked at news stories around unexpected circumstances that impact people in roles of prominence, to Danielle's point, in prominent positions or public facing positions. It could be politicians, it could be music, it could be sports, actors, whomever, right? And something controversial happens. We could check the data on the impact of cancel culture, not just that it happens, because it is a thing that happens, no doubt. Power and influence is foundational to it, no doubt. But what I would ask you all to do is this. What does the data say about each of the instances that you find over the next 15 days? It could be 3 of them. How is cancel culture having an adverse impact, and then on who? So it can be happening, but then what's the impact to the who? Because I'd submit this, but if you check the data, the impact is going to always be harsher as it anchors to the hue of your skin, right? Because Rachel Nichols still has a job at ESPN. You know,
exactly right.
And to your point, Raymond, but what's her name? Jamel Hill does not.
Absolutely, Jeff. I was going to go there. Absolutely. And here's what's crazy. If we went back and pulled the Jamel Hill circumstance that led to her departing, nothing she said was inaccurate. Nothing. Right? What Rachel Nichols was implying was wholly inaccurate. And if anybody follows the NBA and you watched the other night, Game 6, that young lady, that young Black woman killed it when she interviewed Giannis Antetokounmpo. She killed it. She's outstanding at what she does. She's beyond reproach at what she does. Rachel Nichols asked Chris Paul, who's devastated, what does it feel like to lose? As a person who played the game and coached the game, the dumbest question in the history of sports reporting in that moment. And this is the woman who said that ESPN was trying to shore up its diversity, equity, and inclusion by giving this other young woman an opportunity. And that young woman stood on stage with millions watching and hit it out the park. Rachel Nichols on stage with millions watching and asked one of the dumbest questions that any reporter could ask in the history of sports.
So
right?
let me say this. So it sounds to me, and I don't know how many of our listeners are driving by and listening to this, it sounds like cancel culture is selective. Because when I look back at Jamie Dimon, you know, a while back, has been well documented, stood in front of a federal judge on fraud cases, and how he had taken federal money that was supposed to go to people to save their mortgages, and he paid a healthy fine and went back and still got $19 million as a bonus for saving their skin. And our government gave him almost 30 something odd million. I think it's 36 or 39. Don't hold me to that number. But an hour later, there was a young Black man that had an ounce of some type of narcotic. They got 12 years of incarceration. But also, you know, when we talk about cancel culture, we didn't cancel, you know, getting our mortgage from that lending institution, nor with all the many times that there has been a misstep on one of the biggest retail markets that our people support. For some reason, we don't have picket signs and we're not boycotting that individual store. And they're probably never going to be a sponsor of Talking with Kevin and Son, but I'm going to go ahead and call out Walmart, because I know from personal experience and standing within the infrastructure as a contracted employee of how the people on the ground level. So I know they try to do a lot as far as philanthropy, but at the other hand, it's like smacking your child beside the head and tell someone you missed him twice. So why is there a difference? Is it the who gets canceled and not the what or the why?
Is it solely just about power and influence? We know that that's a dynamic, but what's the primary driver? Thoughts, suggestions, ideas? How do you all see this in your own experiences, in your places of work? And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to have platforms that are national media. Do you see elements of this? it could be you're sitting in a meeting, right? And you've got this perspective about the work, and you've been there for a minute, and you're seeing things, and you keep speaking into the space, right? About change. How's that received? Because there are threads and throughways that lead to what we call cancel culture. Thoughts? Anybody?
I would just allude back to it being, it's solely up to the person and how the person is looking at cancel culture. It depends on their position on it. Anybody that can be an opposing thought or an opposing feeling to that person in that space or in that time is someone that they'll be like, you know what, you're canceled. Like, at this point, it's kind of dismissive. Like, I don't really want to hear what you have to say. It's more so like, that's not where I stand on the thought. And if there's enough people that follow along on that same premise, then it's something that would be real strong held. Like, okay, we all don't agree with this one person. So 9 times out of 10, that person will most likely get pushed out. But then you do have those people, as y'all asked earlier about the heroes, you do have people that do speak out about this. But again, the narrative, how many times are you going to show the positive side of a story before you show the negative? Media, people, a lot of times is driven on the negative aspect of it. You can get more information from the negative that can be false, but the negative is more, it's something that is more take to. Why? Because it's drama filled. It's something that can be fair based. It's something that can definitely like just take a movement from one end of the spectrum to another. So no matter how positive someone can be, or no matter how many people can stand up and be that hero, like you say, it doesn't matter. If the narrative doesn't want to show the positive aspect of it, you won't get seen, or the algorithm on whatever social media is not going to put that out there, because right now that's not getting the likes, that's not getting the views, and that's not getting the people to really get riled up. So ultimately, it's just, you have both, but what are you tuning into? What are you focusing on? Because now you have to take a look at yourself. If you're always going to sit here and look at the cancel culture, what is fueling you to sit here and look at what's going on negatively? Why are you not looking at the positive side of it as well? What are you not seeing in the positive side? So that's when you just have to open up that conversation with you. All right, why do I consider this canceled? Why do I feel this way about it? Where's my stance?
Speak on it, sis. Speak on it. Speak. Hold on, Kev. Speak on it. Speak on it. Listen, Tori, you done raised some stuff over here, sis. I'm saying, reflection is powerful. Thank you. Go ahead, Kev.
I also think, Tori, you didn't kick it open. You took the door off the hinge. You opened the door for empathy, because a lot of times, we react because there are a lot of things that may be going on in our lives. And I'm going to share two stories. All right. At 17 years old, a young man that we know, popular, I got a chance to meet him on the set of Invincible, which I happen to be a part of. Mark Wahlberg at 17 years old, made a bad choice at 17, where he accosted or assaulted a person of color. He used racial slurs. He was condemned in 2021 because he came out and supported a conversation of civil rights and Black Lives Matter. And everyone wanted to cancel him. Are we not, or any of us, without sin? Have we not made a mistake 25 years ago? And then all of a sudden, because we now have a public platform, and I know Marjorie and Raymond, and we've all talked about this with our morality clause with RMK production, is that we know someone's going to turn the page, a part of our history, and try to do exactly what we're doing, cancel the good things that we're doing. All right. At some point, we have to stay in the present and take the situation, the conversation for what it is, and not try to be judge, jury, and executioner at the same time. And again, I'm going to open up, and we got to find out why. There was a reason behind that choice, the reason why we make that decision. When I get an educator here in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, that happens to be a person of color, that figures out that young Black children learn at a different rate than white children, and he adjusted his curriculum, and it cost him his position. Why? Education is education, and every child needs to be treated and educated as a single child, not on the government standards of a test. Now, you guys are educators, Tori, Danielle, Raymond, Jeff, Diana, I don't know your background, or Evan, but answer me that. Why?
Well, I have a thought, right? And as T. Ellis, I don't know your first name, but as he was speaking, and you know, for me, it's like, what is the motive behind some of this stuff and what's going on, or the ulterior motive? And I just want to highlight two examples of that. One, Oprah Winfrey. And again, I have nothing against Oprah Winfrey, but kind of what was the point of her having that Michael Jackson story and drudging all of that stuff up? And this man has been dead when there are thousands of Hollywood stuff going on in Hollywood all the time that she didn't touch, right? Then the second thing is her best friend, Gayle King, covering the Kobe Bryant when he died and trying to bait Lisa Leslie, somebody really close to him, to drudge up the things that had nothing to do with him dying and people mourning. And as you said, showing empathy. What did that have to do, you know what I mean, with any of that stuff? Like, what were their motives for doing those types of stories and trying to drudge up, the negative things that happened in their past? Like why? I know negativity and drama and sex sells. We know that and we understand that. But as we're talking about, culture and stuff, these are people of color that have done a lot of things positive for the community, but they're dead now, right? And so when you want to speak, you didn't speak or talk about any positive things, as she pointed out, in their legacy. You went to the negative right off the bat. And I don't get it. I have no idea why they would do that.
I want to say, Kevin said something about, people, making, mistakes. Like we said something in the past 20 years ago. I was reading something this morning about Eric Clapton making racist remarks and things like that. And, I didn't know. And apparently he said, it was stupid. He shouldn't have said it or something. But however he apologized, it still wasn't good enough. Right. And I love Eric Clapton music. But again, you could see it. It was happening right there. Cancel, cancel, cancel. It was happening, and that's, and we tend to do that. But again, Kevin brought up the term empathy. And I just came from a workshop where we actually were talking about empathy over criticism. Can we live in a society where there is empathy over criticism? And that's the big thing right now. There's so much criticism that fuels cancel culture. When I put in the chat, cancel culture, and this is what sociologists have said, that cancel culture was really about a way, and really Black people started it. We started doing it, right? Of punishing people who with bad behavior, racism, misogyny, homophobia. And we started holding our Black celebrities and leaders and all of them accountable. That was our way of doing that. What has happened, like I said before, this thing has morphed into something toxic, because now this other side has taken a hold of it and has just made it about, something that it really wasn't. And that's where we are. And it is happening with almost every terminology we come out with. It happens with almost every sort of concept, anything we come up with, right? Our ideas, they want to take it and they want to weaponize it. that is where we're at right now with cancel culture. So it forces us now to come in as a community and start to have these conversations. What we really doing here? What we really talking about here? You know, what does all of this really mean? That's what it is, and we got to gain control of that again.
Yeah.
Marjorie, what I think about is I was at a conference, mass executive conference for school district superintendents a week ago. We had a guy on presenting, and so there's a big movement around, centering voices of diverse educators from, in leadership backgrounds and experiences that's happening obviously around the country and in schools. And there's a big concern around, and this goes back to Nicole Hannah Jones's story regarding, her involvement with the 1619 Project and how the perspective about the critical race theory and anybody attached to it is inflammatory. In education circles, if you guys open a newspaper, you're going to see around the country, remember where the origins of this came from. Donald Trump saying that he would defund school systems and districts around the country if critical race theory was being taught. And so here's the part, to Marjorie's point, that and to Tori's really key consistent points, is that the inaccuracy, the life of its own thing is real. This cancel culture thing has absolutely taken on a life of its own, and it doesn't care who it eats alive, no doubt. But we investigate the origins of things for a reason, right? Because Marjorie put in the chat, the idea behind this was to punish bad behavior. Absolutely, right? Which is a very moral thing to do. Yes, it's judgment. Yes, there can be bias and it can lack grace when we punish, right? Bad behavior, right? We can address, not punish, we can address bad behavior in a lot of ways, right? So my question would be, is that a byproduct of American culture? People will watch me here and say, this dude is always talking about American culture, right? I'm just asking, right? If we looked at the threads, right? And let's talk about journalism, not just mass media, journalism. The tide turned, I would submit, when Rush Limbaugh was a big time political analyst and got on the airways and was this big, bombastic, loudmouth dude. And at the time, he was a political pundit, and he knew what the hell he was talking about. But what he found in short order was there were folks that we consider, when you think about what happened on the Capitol, those people that rushed the Capitol, we found that big organizations, some of those people were executives, and they were tied to dark money. And you saw Donald Trump and his cronies in the background watching the TV screens as this happened, enjoying it, right? And so I guess my point is this. When I think, if you think about American culture, why is it that we have, to Tori's point, gains? Why does negativity sell on American soil? Why? Because that's the linchpin. Catch that linchpin? That's the linchpin to this thing, right? That negativity sells. Being passive, forgiving is not in vogue anymore. No. Right? So I wonder about the intersectionality in capitalism, right? Again, right? When we objectify one another and our humanity for $1, right? Over being human.
Yep. And on that note, I want to be socially responsible because we have this platform to talk, because I know I had left Mark Wahlberg out there on a limb with one part of the conversation, and all of a sudden I just opened up a door that was closed. But the caveat to that situation, when we were on that film of Invincible, the Vince Papale story, I had to bring my son to work because I did not have a sitter. And the only way I was going to be able to continue my job if my son came, and they allowed me to bring my oldest son, Alex. At that time, he was in the 6th grade. Mark Wahlberg walked in where all the extras was, and he came in every single morning. And he walked over and he goes, "Who is this? This little Mac?" I said, "Yes." And he took my son, spent the whole day with my son. My son sat while they were filming his father, sat in the director's chair with Oscar Award winning people, and he has been a pillar. He has done a lot of good. When we talk about empathy, the mistakes he made as a child, and I'm sure I made a couple that I don't remember, but when you talk about, where did this all come from? It's like watching a scene of a car accident. Everyone wants to drive by slowly to see if there's a dead body, but no one wants to get out and see if they can help. Our society right now is at the top of the ladder. They drop poop and we catch it. And then we play this game to see who dropped the poop. We know where it came from, but we go out at each other because someone was standing next to me and tossed it over to me, so now it's his fault. And if we look at the way that the system is designed, and it is a design, is that those of us that are on this platform that are at the ground levels, they are happier at the top when we are not looking for why, but we're pointing fingers as to who's at fault and who we cancel. We're canceling the wrong people. I said this earlier, and I said this to Danielle. If we stop voting in our people's grandfathers into positions of power, this conversation and the narrative of this conversation would change. I don't know how dramatic it would be, but it will definitely change.
I've been. Go ahead, Diana.
Go ahead, Diana.
I was going to say I have lots of thoughts on some of the stuff. To answer your question from the beginning, Kevin, a few points back. I'm in school for social work right now, so one of the things I'm thinking of is like sometimes it's important to separate the behavior from the person. Like you can say the behavior is not okay, but like still having empathy for the person because they still deserve dignity and respect. And also the conversation about like judging people today based on their past and not seeing the evolution of who they are as a person. I see that this is a conversation that's happening kind of in the YouTube community because there's a lot of YouTube, like big YouTube people, and these like are basically like celebrities now, that they have passed stuff on the internet. They've basically grown up on the internet. They've made a living off of vulnerability. And how that algorithm works is you might get something into your feed that's from 10 years ago, and this person has evolved on that position over the years, and they're constantly having to re-explain themselves. And there was a whole bunch of YouTube stars that got canceled, quote unquote, and it brings up the idea of like, you have a right to be forgotten. Like what does this mean when we live on the internet and we are constantly documenting our thoughts in like public forums? At what point, and in other countries, they are starting to create laws that are like right to be forgotten laws, that people can go, I want my digital information to be removed because I don't want to constantly have to explain a position that I have evolved on since then. And I'm not that person anymore, and I'm this person now. And it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting discussion to have about like, what does that mean, as we're like here on, because like, are we constantly going to have to, like on the internet, like especially Twitter, I feel like there's a lot of young people on Twitter and they don't understand the context. Like I feel like during Pride Month, you saw all of these people get really upset about Target and Old Navy and all these places having like Pride stuff. at the stores. And yes, is it capitalism? Yes, but also they don't understand the context of like what it was even 20 years ago, and what that means for like these communities who are getting recognition from like on a national level, and trying to the perfect is like the enemy of perfection is the enemy of progress or something. Is that the saying? So
just to piggyback off of that, and to bring the conversation back to a lot of points that was given from both Jeff and Kevin and even Diana during this time, it's like when you look at the negative stuff that is being brought back up, no one's past is always going to be in the past. Their past comes with their present. It's like they say, the past haunts you. But unfortunately, with how algorithms work, like Diana said, it's what's selling. So whether it's with social media, whether it's with, like Oprah and Gail, like Jeff has put out there, it's pretty much stating like, we could see all the great things that they have done. We've been watching it for the past few years, but let's not forget what has happened in the past. So they want to bring that information back out. So now that's starting a whole nother form of conversation. But you also have to ask yourself, okay, so who's in charge of these networks on top of it? Because you can have, say, it's the Oprah network, but clearly there's someone above her who's now sitting here saying, like, I need you to talk about this and bring this back up. Now, let's tie that into the school systems, like Kevin said. When it comes to the kids, they're looked at as data, same way as teachers are looked at as data. So ultimately, when you have these school systems, charter schools, public schools, they have these new curriculums coming in, these new standardized testing coming in, your kid or any child is being looked at as a piece of data. How well they're going to excel. It doesn't matter if they are different. It doesn't matter if they excel at a different level, doesn't learn at a different level. Do they fit the one fits all form? So everything at this point is now a business, from the school systems to teaching our children, from community based on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, or even on just regular TV. Business is what is the top tier. So the people heading these businesses are trying to see what can make the most money, how they're going to make the money off of it. And if they do not get the data that they need, then they're losing money or something's not going to be refunded.
Goes back to that profit over people discussion we were having, Motivational Sunday as well. You guys posed some really good questions. What I've started doing was copying and pasting, because we may not be able to get to all of them, but because we want to keep the conversation going even after we're done. But I think a good one, and Diana just put a very good point in here too, that has to do with cancel culture as well. When you think about, ex-felons and people coming back, and how society has sort of canceled them as well. That's another great discussion. But Danielle's question, and because this, I was really wanting to end it on us talking about, what is an alternative, right, to cancel culture. But I think I like your question about if this is some form of a punishment, right? For people not being politically correct or socially correct or whatever, who decides when and if that punishment ends, right? So how long does that go on for?
Well,
That's a hell of a question, because
Yes, it is.
It's a great question. But before we delve into that, I just wanted to, also to share a thought. We're talking about canceling culture, right? But really, we're canceling everything. Let's think about it. We're canceling morality, right? We're canceling family. We're canceling values.
Man.
We're canceling pretty much, you can run the gambit, right? And to Diana's point, I mean, right now, we should all be wearing capitalism versus everybody, right? You see those shirts, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And think about it. as diverse as our music is in the culture, remember we come from, well, speaking for me, I come from the Temptations era, the Motown era, right? Where it was soul music, good for your soul. You can listen to it. You didn't have these explicit lyrics. You could play it on the radio, play it in your car, vibe to it. But what is the mainstream music playing right now? Like, and it's all day, every day.
It plays profit.
But that's what I'm saying. And it's so much, it's so many different genres. It's so much, but you don't hear that other stuff enough. Look at the Grammys, even to the extent where you didn't even have Black people at the Grammys and performing. Now look at who's taking center stage, right? Like, look at the content. When again, there are so many more positive musicians, so much more of a positive image that you can project, and it's not happening, right? And the same thing with as you know, you guys have mentioned on several different times, but the narrative, like what is that narrative? Who's controlling that narrative and what's being put out there? So we're being inundated not only with the image, with the messaging, as Raymond pointed out, to the weaponry, but now you have the imagery also. You know what I mean? And so, it's all doing to what sells, right? And then they duplicate it, right? So if I'm the hot rapper in my style and I'm doing auto-tune or whatever, so now that becomes the trend. And then everybody wants to then do it. And that's what they're gonna promote and push. And so, because again, that's what sells. That's what's gonna make money. That's what's gonna give us ratings. That's what's gonna give us likes, as somebody alluded to. But it's really sad, to be honest.
Can I just chime in for 10 seconds here? So one of the things that what Jeff just shared and what Tori's been like holding her finger to our pulse on tonight, thank you, Tori, is this idea of our humanity, right? So Tori says it's a choice, it's a personal choice. When I'm working with educators and we talk about how we objectify ourselves in the work, I'm an assistant superintendent, so now I'm a district leader, right? When I was in schools as a school leader, I was admin versus being a classroom teacher. Like, we continue to objectify through positionality, to Jeff's point, right? And this who controls the narrative is about the platform, right? You got this idea of, and I put it in the chat, when you've interfaced with people, intersected with people around business opportunities and experiences, and something goes left. We experienced something similar, RMK, Raymond, Marjorie, and Kevin, right? Where we had a situation that we had to unpack working with a potential partner. And what we learned, the three of us learned through that situation, was our priorities were more anchored in more authenticity as people. We talked with each other about trust and love and honesty and having each other's back, family. This idea of, we don't expect one another to be perfect. We hold each other down, right? And so this in this experience, what we learned was this potential partner was about the dollars. This potential partner was about, and that wasn't a problem. What made it a problem was that now we don't communicate. Now we say one thing out the left-hand side of our mouth, and then we're saying something different out the right side of our mouths. And in real time, when we call you out and call you in, now you feel away. Now you got feeling. Now you caught feelings, right? And now you want to dip. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for us, right, what we learned through that experience is everything that you all have messaged here tonight, right? That this idea of our humanity, and I'll close with this, I had a colleague of mine say, I want prosperity for mine. I want better. I want a legacy for mine. You know what I'm saying? Yup, America got its ways and this, that, and the third, and da, 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 da. I want prosperity. I want mine to have in this life. All the while, you're justifying what you know to be wrong. And I'm not passing judgment. I'm saying what we do, humanoids, in an American culture that leads with Ben Franklin and George Washington dead faces on pieces of paper. We start to now define our humanity. We start to define, when you tell me prosperity, Tori, I'm going to ask you to define it, love. Define prosperity for me. Don't give me Webster's dictionary. Danielle, don't say Webster's dictionary. Jeff, tell me what you mean when you say prosperity. So in order for us to get back to our humanity, what I'm posing is we have to really be mindful of this unconscious lean into it that we have. Marjorie, Kevin, and I, we do this because we want to be present in our humanity with others. We want to co-construct our reality and be unplugged from the matrix, because we all know, we've all heard this story. When you go meet your maker, whoever that maker is that you believe in, none of your prosperity is going with you. It is, what did you do in the dash? And so I know y'all the choir as I'm singing my solo here, but that's what this conversation led me to. It affirms that the way I get down in this life, when I sit with tremendous thought partners like yourselves, that I must be doing something right. So I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll pass the mic.
And I want to go ahead and thank our listeners for staying with us. And if you like what you've listened to, Storytime and Wine, we're always on the third Saturday of every single month. If you felt uncomfortable and you stayed with us in this part of the conversation, just remember, education is not designed for you to be comfortable. It's designed to make you think. The purpose of this group with Diana, Effin, Jeff, Marjorie, Danielle, Raymond, The Cloud, and myself is to share with you perspective in the framework of learning and modeling, to make you feel a kind of way that you want to change. And in the event that you guys are sponsors and want to attach yourself to a cause that's making a difference, feel free to reach out to us at info@rmkproductions.net. And Marjorie, what's the other one? We just came up with a new one. I'll go ahead and leave it to you, and I'll get out of the business and let you close up.
Well, that's the email. So that's the best way to get in contact with us. But we are definitely on social media now. So we have, we have info@rmkproductions.net. We're on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We're going to get on Twitter. We're going to be there. Even though that's where a lot of this mess happening, we're going to be right up in it, driving the conversation. And of course, here on YouTube, we want to continue the conversation. We want you guys to continue to be a part of the conversation. Even if you couldn't be here in the room with us, let's continue talking about it. But most importantly, let's be about it. I really feel like when we have these conversations, it's about now what, right? Now, what can we do, right? And like Ray says, we do a lot when we in it, just having this conversation. That's doing something. But for some of you, there could be more. There might be more you want to do. So, do it. If this conversation has really stirred something up in you, then do it. Think about, what are the alternatives to cancel culture? How can we better engage with one another and be there for one another and get away from individualism and really see ourselves collectively as a community and support one another and stop the canceling, but empowering and encouragement and all of that. So that's just something for you to think about. Our website is also up. at RMK Productions and network.net and network. Okay. So you want to like, you want to follow, you want to share this information with everybody. And before we go, I just want to hear from everyone in the room, because this is one thing we don't do. We don't do a quick mic check and emotional check and all of that with everyone. And just, very briefly, just tell us what this experience was like for you tonight. And I'm going to start with you, Jeff. You're muted.
Okay. It was a great experience for me. Just the dialogue and the information shared and just the thoughts on it, on the different perspectives was great for me.
So,
Jeff, what social medias are you on? Twitter, Facebook, and your last name, Jeff Jackson.
Yeah, I'm just on Facebook. I'm not into all the other social media, just Facebook.
Danielle?
Closing thoughts?
Yeah, yes, closing thoughts. What was this experience like for you tonight? Yeah.
This was a learning experience for me, and it speaks to how I need to show up when I return to school. I need to show up without fear, speak up for my students, and represent them so that they aren't worried about speaking for themselves out of fear of being canceled. We can't cancel the voices of children. And that's what I'm going to take away from this. Thank you.
Tori?
This conversation was I think it's an eye opener. It's more so one that you can definitely gain the perspectives of a lot of like-minded people, put you in a room with thoughts that are far beyond what you think you're sitting here feeling yourself and think you're going through yourself. When you be able to interact with other people who can expand their vision or their mind far past that little narrow way that most people look at, it's like, okay, you're walking into a conversation of change. You're walking into a conversation of something that can lead to better and something that can ultimately touch somebody, whether it's you touching one person at a time or you're touching masses. Either way, when you are left, like I said before, inspiring somebody, or you left with touching somebody in a good way, you're already changing the world one step at a time. So you just look at it that way.
Thank you. Diana? And just so you know, Diana is also here. She's been here before, but she's also here fulfilling a class project. So we are so glad and honored that you would use Storytime and Wine as part of that requirement.
I am. I'm thinking about what I can do moving forward after this. This conversation was really interesting. The perspectives you all brought to the table about thinking about cancel culture, and I see like the different aspects of it, but like you brought a different dimension, and that I hadn't considered before. And yeah, just thinking about what that means moving forward in this place.
Great. Well, always great to have you as part of the conversation. So hope you join us again soon. Irfan, I could never pronounce your name. Efron. Young man. How was it for you tonight?
Excellent. Really enjoyed it.
Good, good. See, like it, short and brief. My kind of man. All right. Listen, guys, thank you again for joining us for another Storytime and Wine. Look out for us again next month, where we're gonna keep it real. We're coming back with something, make you feel uncomfortable again. So just get ready. So from myself, Marjorie, my partner Ray, and Kevin, be the change you want to see in the world. Peace out.
Thank you, guys. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you. This
Yes.
was great.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are, man, Tori, you got me all turned around over here, sis. Like, I'm just saying, like, when you talk about, for me, I think a lot about my level of engagement when I'm in spaces and when I'm talking to people, and like you said, having a conversation with folks that are like-minded. You inspired me tonight, and I appreciate you. And in
Most
all
definitely.
seriousness, I'm embarrassing you a little bit, I'm sure, but I want you to hear where I'm coming from. Living in this world for as long as I have, which is a lot, and a lot longer in this life than you are. And so I want to affirm the fact that you are teaching, you are inspiring, because you've taught and inspired me. So I appreciate you, and I hope, as I think about what anchors me to my humanity is my hope, that you continue to be who you are every day, that you bring that light that you show up with. And everybody here brought that tonight. But for me, um, I just, it felt like you were speaking into my spirit in a lot of ways on a lot of things. So thank you for that. And I applaud you. I encourage you. I'm a cheer for you, and I know you down with my girl, Danielle. You got a thought partner that you kick it with on a regular basis. And just so y'all know, one of my troopers in this life is Jeff Jackson. That's my big brother. He's been dropping knowledge, with me, to me as his little brother for over 3 decades. And so I am grateful for him, and I'm grateful for everybody that's here tonight. My big brother Kev as well. My other brother Efron, who showed up silent, but he's
He
here.
shows up though.
He's here present,
He shows
and
up.
Every
Diana, I
time.
hope you saw what I wrote in the chat. You kick big facts, you're kicking big facts. And so I appreciate you as well. But thank you all. You all killed it. Like, I just, please,
Yeah,
we got
yeah.
Motivational Sunday coming up. And it's on the RMK site, and it's not a long session. So what we do is we pull a quote, and we share kind of what that quote means to us. And T, this is to your point about like kicking positive. This is what we're trying to be intentional about. It's a short period of time on Sunday. We show up with the quote, and then everybody reflects on that quote and what it means to them. It could have been an impact that it had that day, the day prior, during the course of the week, how it resonated with you. And we share that with each other, and we go on back to our day on some more powerful, fueled up, glasses filled to the brim type stuff. Y'all hear me? Y'all heard me? All right. So if
You
you can show
heard.
up, for Motivational Sunday, please, please, please do it. This is the actionable step that allows us to do something.
At 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, I want to close. I want to thank all of our guests, and I want to point out Diana. And I know that when people are driving and are listening to this, they can't tell who we are, if we are different races, different backgrounds, rich, poor, whatever. But I will tell you, during the last 14 to 15 months, I questioned humanity. I questioned my space in humanity. Today, my humanity got a reprieve. Listening to the conversation of Diana and everyone in here, and we're all different backgrounds and all different colors of people, to say that, hope is alive, the dream is alive. And the question to why, we're coming closer as long as we stay together. And I just want to say, as a representative and a part of this fantastic team of my brothers and my sisters, and my new family, Danielle, Tori, Jazzy, Jeff, brother Jeff, JJ Jackson. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. All right.
All right, guys. Have a good night.